symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
What's happening, everybody? The Job Guys back with you one more time. Slopes are sitting right over here. That is not Nick. That is our boy, Austin Sumowitz, joining us one more time, as he usually does when we have something to talk about, by a certain fella named Phil Brooks, who once again was in the news this past weekend and again here tonight. We are recording this Monday, the 27th. He is back, and he is back in WWE and back on Monday Night Raw. One of the biggest fans that we know. We've all seen those ridiculous reactions from everybody across the internet when he showed up at Survivor Series.
What? Oh my God! Oh my God! What the? Holy!
Wait!
Oh
Wait!
Yo! What the hell? Oh my God! Get this off me! Get this off me! What the f? What the f?
That's what I'm talking about. This means something to me, man. Somebody said AEW died today.
I know. Oh my God! They did it! They did it! Oh my God!
Our pal Austin had one of those of his own. He was in attendance when he made the first comeback 2 years ago in Chicago in AEW. You sent me a picture laying on the ground. I assume that was from the other night. Am I right?
Yeah, it was about right. I had actually, I think he already returned, and I was just like, if people were wondering how I was feeling, that was basically how I felt. That was it.
Yeah, you were knocked out.
Yeah, no, I straight up dropped. I had my phone in my hands and I was watching it, and then the super shows up in the bottom right, copyright 2023, and I'm like,
right.
Everyone got their hopes up for nothing. Now they're going to start thinking that he's the devil in AEW and he's going to be with the guy under the mask, and we're going to start the whole cycle over again. And then I hear the static, and I, no joke, fell to my knees and just screamed ah! I couldn't believe it.
Well, as you know, if you saw our report, I was shocked as well. Mm-hmm. The way they did it, I thought, was perfect. And as you know, I am not the biggest fan of CM Punk on earth, but the way they did it, how they did it, brought a smile to my face after an show. I was like, all right, you got me.
No,
okay.
Especially considering, I knew they weren't going to be able to live up to War Games last year. Survivor Series War Games, that men's match was one of the best that they've had. And, one they did,
storyline.
Absolutely. Yeah. There was no way they could top it. And this one was a lot more safe, played it very safe, especially the men's match. I thought the women's one was honestly kind of more risk taking.
Sure.
But I felt like, there's going to be a lot of people that were disappointed by the way it ended. And then they just pulled the haymaker right at the end. And I just saw that man walk out, plain white t-shirt and all. And the Prudential Center was exploding.
Well, and they allowed him to wait to speak until this evening. And that's what we're going to talk about.
Absolutely.
As we always do, we will break it down and we'll go word by word and all that kind of stuff of what he did or did not say, depending on who you are. Some think he should have said more. Anyway, we will do that in a minute. Just your overall thoughts on what he had to say. Commercial free through the first hour. Didn't know exactly if he'd come out then, when he'd come out. No, he closed the show. They made you wait 3 hours to hear what he had to say. Just your overall thoughts as a major fan of this guy on what he had to say in the WWE for the first time in 10 years.
Yeah, definitely a pretty standard, I would say, for Punk, of a promo of that type. Got very cornball, obviously, with him saying, I'm home, which, listen, I remember Thanksgiving 2014 when that podcast showed up on my feed and all the things that he said.
Colt Cabana.
Ripping WWE to pieces. And then for him to come out 9 years later, nearly a decade, and say, I'm home, definitely was a shock to the system for this guy who heard him say everything about, WWE and everything like that. But, he went out there and he said he changed, which, I knew there was going to be a lot of things that
too. That
a
was
lot of
two
things
other
that he was
words.
going to say. Yep. A lot of things that he said I knew were going to rub people so wrong. And I could see the way that he was kind of being like, oh, I know people are going to be upset about this. But at the same time too, he didn't run away from it. He was upfront 1,000%. And I love the fact that the last things you hear from him are, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make money. So look, everyone who wants to call him out for it, he's telling you straight up, yeah, I know, I'm doing it for the money. So what are you going to do about it?
I would take that the exact opposite way, and I have this written down because what it says to me is he didn't change whatsoever. At the end, he couldn't help himself. He had to come out and go, I'm here for them. I'm not here to make friends. The famous Scott Hall line. I'd like the money. And that's, the famous Scott Hall, I believe, is the first wrestler I've heard say that. I don't think he invented that. So I took it the other way. I'm like, oh, he was being real nice. I think the I'm home thing is a subtle shot at AEW, even though he did not come out and punch down. And I'll say it, if he would have brought up the name AEW, he's punching down. He didn't do that. And he took no shots at the Elite or the Bucks or Hangman or anybody like that.
There's one that I've seen people try to take and run, which I think is kind of a reach. But like as they cut, like the show basically cut away, but there was a bit of a victory lap.
He's running, yeah, I saw that too.
I don't think it was if it was obnoxiously like hands directly fist pumping in the air and running 360 around the ring. I could maybe see
now, it might have been close. When they cut. It may have been.
It was close.
Yeah, it may have been. Yeah, I saw that as well. But, I would take maybe I'm home as a shot, whether you want to say it or not, whatever. It's either way. Or, no, I'm home. This is where I made a name for myself and all that sort of thing. Let's break the whole thing down. We already have a little bit, but yeah, he's speaks for the first time since his return. They said during the show, I don't know if you caught it, I know you were working, 71 million views so far, the most social moment that they've ever had, and that includes,
I think it had like 17 million in like 15 minutes or something.
Right, you're right. Yeah, there are a lot of people looking at it again and again and again. I thought the pop was kind of funny. We know this dude's polarizing. Yeah, you love him or hate him. Even in Chicago, you were there. The weekend he got fired, people were chanting his name, followed by immediate boos. We saw a little of that this weekend too. Friday night at SmackDown, there were videos over the internet, and then again on Saturday, at the pay-per-view. I didn't think the pop was nearly as big, which it's not going to be in Chicago. But it got quiet quick, and they let him talk like the second he got in the ring. So I thought that was a little strange, but we know this guy is polarizing and he's not at home.
Well, and also too,
booze or anything, though, like some were worried about.
Yeah, but also too, it's the one thing I've always said about Punk when it comes to just cutting promos. I mean, like, he didn't skip a beat. Like, from the second he had the microphone in his hand, everybody in the palm of his hand, and they are just leaning and like sitting on every word he's about to say. It's the one thing that's crazy, because you'll go from the crowd being dead silent, listening to everything, and then he gives you the little nod to chant his name, and they blow up.
Which he did. Which he did. He stopped a couple times so they could chant his name. Just go over. The first thing he says, looks like hell froze over.
Yep.
Yeah. Here he is back here for the first time in almost 10 years. 2 words. And I didn't think he'd do it, but the first 2 words that came to me, he was like, I know it's corny. I was like, he's not going to say, I'm sorry, is he? There's no way. I'm like, there's no way. And then he said, I'm home. I'm like, all right, well, yeah, all right. Anyway, wise men once told me I had to leave and come back. Turns out that guy was right, he said. Everybody welcomed him back. He said numerous times. Then he goes, well, almost everyone.
Shout out to AJ Lee as well, too. The nice little AJ pop, because everyone was wondering, now, is she going to get the opportunity to come back?
And called her AJ, by the way.
Absolutely.
Her kayfabe name. But yeah, and then at the end, he does the, I'm here to make friends. No, I'm here to make money. Then he starts running with his arms up, a la the Young Bucks. A lot of people were disappointed It sounds like you were not. Is this what you were expecting, though, after everything that has happened here in the last
think that's the
2
thing, though,
months
is like,
and then 10 years?
First night back, obviously, there's seeds that were planted. Not everybody's happy. And earlier in the night, too,
right,
Seth Rollins got bombarded with CM Punk chants.
Yep.
And he's like, get it out of your system.
Yep.
Because I don't need to give any more wasted breath to that hypocrite.
Yep.
And spectacular.
And Cody Rhodes also said, you're welcome back. And he made a Dusty reference in there. And I'm like,
yeah.
Are we pointing toward something here maybe at some point also?
Oh, that's the thing, too, is that we never got Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk when they were both in AEW. So, I mean, it's a very well a possibility, because that's just what my mind's been at, is just the matches and the stories and the feuds that we can get with CM Punk back in WWE.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, last I talked to you 2 months ago, I thought this would never happen. And 2 months later, like, I would have thought at the very least, if he did show up, it would be next year, not before 2023 is even over.
Because we didn't know how that contract worked. We didn't know if he had to sit out the length of the contract, if he was getting paid to stay at home. We had no idea. Here we are 2 months later, he's back.
No, but in terms of just the promo itself, it was very, for the most part, safe, played it up to the fans, and, getting people excited just because, he is back. I mean, this is nearly a decade of being gone, and a bridge that had been basically demolished, burnt to a crisp, and it dusted away so much that it seemed like there was no way to repair it. And somehow, some way, all of a sudden, like, these two are coexisting.
I agree with that, but I don't, because it's WWE. If it'd be any other company on earth, when you look at superstar Billy Graham, Bruno Sammartino, Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, I mean, go through.
Sure.
There's a million of them go down the line, and they've all come back.
And it's always the never say never. It's what they first
always
tweeted out when he came back. And again, like, people always said that to me, but I mean, like, it's like, it was my first experience of a wrestler from my generation that happened to. And, when it's your generation, you're like, oh, this is completely different than all the other ones.
Sure. Well, but and he's a different type of guy also than maybe some of those other guys are. And he did have a different opportunity to make a lot of money, which those other guys didn't have because the territories were put out of business.
Exactly.
It was WWE or basically bust. And he did make that money. What are you hearing from your friends, your other people who are CM Punk fans? Are you on an island here by yourself, or are you all right back in 100%? Because I have seen some online who are like, forget this guy or whatever. Oh, you're not saying anything. You sold out and now you're under the corporate guide and now you won't say anything, kind of a deal. What are your friends saying?
No, there's definitely some that are like showing like, oh, poorly aged takes and like all the things that he said. And now he's walking them all back and everything like that. There's definitely some that, like, if he ever did come back, because that's the thing, he jokingly laid that line in the sand that never, ever, ever, ever going to come back to WWE. And, but I would also point that out too. It's like, let us be frank here too. If TK actively got everybody into a room and hashed out their differences, and you stopped everything at the past between Punk, the Elite, Hangman, Jungle Boy, all that stuff, you cut all that off at the past, and I don't think he does go back to WWE. And I think that literally, like, that whole downfall, that doesn't happen, and Punk doesn't go back to WWE. So I think a lot of my friends are like more so like, still riding the high that he is there because it's still completely stunning. There are some people that wanted him to go scorched earth, which he wasn't going to do. I mean,
no.
TK literally got interviewed by BBC and he's like, I'm not trying to dodge your question about CM Punk. I legally can't talk about this. Right. So there's still a lot up in the air about that whole deal with him being fired with cause.
And I don't know if that's, I've heard him hide behind some other things, and I'm not going to go into a total con rant here, but I think he does hide sometimes behind, I can't legally talk about that. Once again, we don't know. We're not him. We'll never know whether that's legal or not. But I did hear him say that. And who knows if it's the same the other way for CM Punk, if he'll ever be able to talk about it either. Um, yeah, I will say I was slightly underwhelmed tonight, but you're also talking to a guy that, I was looking forward to it. So I was a little underwhelmed. My problem is, and I thought we saw it for the first time maybe tonight. I've been talking to a bunch of my buddies, are huge CM Punk fans, and they think I'm crazy for not liking him. But I've been saying, what else does this guy have to say? And I know we haven't seen him in this company for 10 years, but outside of like a one-off night, which I want to see him fight Roman at WrestleMania or whenever, but WrestleMania.
Well, you want him to get squashed.
Well, I think he should, but that's true. But what I want to see him is fight, because that's the only thing that makes sense. Like CM Punk's whole thing is shooting on people. That's all the guy does. Well, what a better shoot than with Roman Reigns, because he legit, that's what he shot on 10 years ago on Thanksgiving. So
you got the tie-in with Paul Heyman. You got the tie-in with Paul Heyman too.
And the Paul Heyman is a perfect way to do it. But so I want to see that. But outside of one night, which I've been a huge negative MJF CM Punk thing, because they blew their wad in a half-hour promo in one night, and then they had nothing left to say. Point is, I don't know what else this guy has left to say. And I thought maybe we saw a little of that tonight, just because this is now his third comeback. And it's like, what else? Like, we like you, but all right, what's next? What is the evolution? I have changed. Have you? What is the evolution? That's what I'm waiting to see. And right now I'm kind of like, you got to show it to me.
Yeah, and I think that there were seeds planted, though, because he said not everyone is happy to see him back. And I think, honestly, the story that seems the most interesting to me with the idea of CM Punk being back nearly a decade after he left WWE, guys that were just starting out, like the Shield members, now have gone to have grown to a level that are astronomically different than when Punk was still there. Guys that he'd never seen before. And Hunter now is running creative and all that kind of stuff. But I think the interesting thing about the idea of Punk being back now, and the story that I would hope to see them go down with, is the fact of like, no, this locker room doesn't want you back. And we know you're toxic.
That's what they were going to do.
We know what happened 10 years ago. What happened at that other place
2 months ago.
Yes, it's very fresh. And I think the smartest thing, because the thing that I love about CM Punk is that he takes wrestling storylines, sprinkles a lot of real life in there, and it becomes something spectacular. That was what the MJF feud was.
Roman. That's why I want to see Roman Reigns.
That was what the MJF feud was. That was his feud with John Cena. That was his feud with Eddie Kingston, his feud with Hangman, and Triple H, absolutely. And that's some of the stuff that he does better than most wrestlers out here. So I think the idea of him coming back and just walking around the locker room and everyone giving this guy the stink eye and just basically trying to be like, we are going to get you out of here. Because, I mean, that's all he talked about, too. If you watch his WWE DVD that is on Peacock, he talked about how people wanted him gone from the moment he got called up. I think having that being the story of him making his massive comeback and people being like, no, not this again, would be spectacular. And I think that's what Seth is there for.
Well, no, I think that's who he's going to feud with, like his first major feud. They might have him fight somebody before, and whether it's Seth at Rumble, which is still 2 months away, or WrestleMania. Yeah, I think that's going to be the huge. And they set that up with the way they were reacting at Survivor Series.
That was
he originally threw his belt, and it depends on whose crowd video you look at. He threw his belt originally, then he was yelling, and he's being held back by like Michael Cole and the other announcers, and Cody was even there too a little bit. So I was sitting there thinking, and then the whole Drew thing that I don't believe is not a work.
Well, that was nothing too, because I mean he stormed out too before Punk even came out,
and the cameraman was telling him to go, but then there was he left without changing and all this. I'm like, okay, whatever. I was thinking the same thing. You're going to set up the new guys, the established guys against the old guys. But then at the same time, that's a tough kind of. So who's the good guy there? Because Punk's getting half the audience regardless.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you know, he's getting half the audience. So are you making the WWE guys the bad guys? Like, it's kind of a slippery slope there.
We'll see. And Seth is more of a tweener, I would still think
Sure.
at this point in time, because people still sing his music all over the place. And even though he's
Right.
obnoxious and over the top and
Right.
bombastic, people still love him as a wrestler and him as a character. And Punk is very split as well. And I think, though, I mean, they're cashing in the gravy train of the CM Punk merchandise that they get to sell again now.
Right.
I mean, the first shirt they put out already sold out. And I think they're going to keep it like face for a little while, but I do still believe that. I mean, listen, I know my guy better than most, and he's such a better heel than a babyface. And if you're going to bring him back into the company that he ripped open 10 years ago, I mean, you're going to make him a bad guy. It just seems like that's what it has to be at the end of the day.
You have to. And to quote Wade Keller, he was happy Punk again tonight. You know, he was.
Oh, yeah.
He was happy Punk out there at the beginning. Well, then let's talk about it, because one of the things I was going to ask, obviously, is Mania is the big thing, and he comes in right around Mania season. I believe we had our earliest entrant into the Royal Rumble of all time tonight. Cody already put his name in. It's November 27th.
We got almost 2 months.
Literally 2 months. He already put his name in. Where do you see, obviously, the Rumble? And then do you have a tune-up feud, or does he go and get that belt from Seth right away? Or do you see Seth in Mania, or something completely different?
I would think Punk would be in the Rumble. I would think, because, I mean, think about it. That was the last match he was in WWE. So I think him being back in the Rumble.
10 years later,
Punk,
to the day.
Last we saw Punk was being chokeslammed through a table by Corporate Kane of all people. Cool. And I know, flashback, right? So having
what
him
about
back in that
concessions,
match,
Canes? How many eliminations did he have in that?
I don't know exactly, but
yeah, I don't either.
Having him back in that match where everything fell apart right before he went to Cleveland, Ohio, and took himself into Vince's locker and said, office, and said, "I'm going home." I think him being in the Rumble, whether he wins or loses, which he would probably lose, I would think, and they would have, like, I don't know, maybe I don't actually know exactly. I haven't done my Rumble fantasy booking yet, because I need to figure out like what Roman's playing.
Well, you only got one guy in it so far, so
yeah, exactly. So we still got a ways to go, and also too, this is the first Rumble they've done with, Roman's title and now this brand new World Heavyweight Championship. So do you challenge for only Roman's title, or is the World Heavyweight Championship now available to challenge for at Mania? You would think so, yeah. So if that's the case, then I would think Punk would do that and go after Seth. But if not, then I would think he wouldn't win. But maybe Seth is in the match, Punk screws over Seth, we continue down that road, and then we just start building and building and building towards WrestleMania, and that would be the match.
And we do have an Money in the Bank out there, and if they do the Elimination Chamber in Perth, that usually gets the other title shot, does it not? Or the title is in that match.
Yeah, no, it's either a title shot or the champion is in the match. Yeah,
and I would think maybe Roman might be in it, because that's a big stadium. And they're in Australia for the first time in God knows how long. So he may be in that match. I'm not quite sure there. But something revolving around Seth is what you're thinking here.
At least as a first, because I feel like they're going to give a lot of time for these guys to just dig into each other's history. Because that's the thing, too, is that there's so much stuff you can pull from. I mean, like one of Punk's I'm pretty sure one of his last Monday Night Raw matches was against Shield Seth. So I'd have to go back to confirm it, but it was at least one of his last matches was against either Shield Seth or Shield Dean. So there's a lot of history you can pull from with this whole ordeal. Punk being like, he could go like, you would have never even gotten your shot if the Shield wasn't made for me. And Seth being like, well, you killed our momentum dead in the ground, basically, because you went on a podcast and ripped the company open while I had to be here trying to hold the fort down. And Roman's talked about it. Seth's talked about it. Like, again, he didn't make a lot of friends after that. So I think that there's a lot that they can pull from, which would give it the reason to span further than just, blow off at Rumble or blow off at Elimination Chamber. This would lead to Mania.
I agree with that. And, his whole complaint forever is he hasn't headlined WrestleMania. So you could give him night one.
Oh yeah, he would get one of the nights. I don't know which. It probably would be night one. But yeah, he would get
especially if
night
Cody
one.
finishes the story as we expect to happen.
Mhm.
Any possibility that we get Punk Roman and Cody's on the outs?
For this year's WrestleMania, I would not think so. Down the line, I would hope so, just because, I mean,
right,
top star, it's a no-brainer. Honestly, the matches that have been in my head, I've never seen CM Punk versus AJ Styles.
Yeah.
That's one that I wanted to see. And since John Cena is currently in the process of like having his final run, one of my favorite of all time, Money in the Bank 2011. I would love to see those guys lock up one last time. Like, I've just been going through all of the matches that I want to see. There's plenty to run through. And then also, you want to talk about a promo battle. I mean, give me Punk and LA Knight.
You think he can hang with Punk? I do not.
I don't know if he can hang, but I think if you want to give him a challenge, that's about as big of a challenge as you want.
That's for sure.
You want to really stake your claim as a guy that can really hang with the best. You go against the best.
If you want to find out he's real, there's one way to do it for sure. Okay, you just named 5 dudes. So let's say that's a year's at least worth of booking, if not a year and a half plus.
Mm-hmm.
Will this guy make it that long?
That's the question everyone's brought to me.
I mean, because as you know, we all know, the question is, how do you trust this guy? I'm sure he said all the right things. We know a year ago when he was out after the brawl out, which everybody likes to call it, he went to the Rosemont Horizon, whenever that was, and went inside for a little bit, shook Triple H's hand, talked to people a little bit until he got told to leave. So we know he has been trying to mend some fences, and he has been saying and doing some of the right things. But how long will that last? Because we know whenever anything goes a little bad, he goes nuclear on whoever and blows the whole thing up. How long can you wait to do some of these matches knowing he's a ticking time bomb? And do you expect this is he's going to be a Boy Scout nowadays? What do you think about that? And what do your friends and whoever think about that?
Well, here's genuinely like, because I mean, everyone has been like, oh, this is going to last. Like they've put basically the time limit on where they think this is going to last. Like it's going to end in like 3 months. I give it tops, or he's not going to last more than a year, all this kind of stuff. I honestly feel like, because I think the biggest problem with CM Punk in AEW was that when he was brought in to AEW, I mean, he was lofted as the second coming of Christ, which I love Punk, but no wrestler should be put on that level of a pedestal.
Sure.
Where the guy who owns the company, like myself, is a mark for CM Punk, or was at least. So I think that was one of the biggest problems. He was brought as like the guy that was going to put everything over the top, and like everything was going to run through him. Punk is being brought in as like
at the end, giving a Saturday show to himself.
Yeah, which I mean, like that. At the end of the day, Turner Broadcasting wanted more AEW, but I mean, the show was gifted to Punk basically to keep him in his corner. But with him coming back to WWE, like he is still like, obviously he overshadowed Randy Orton's return, which they even made a joke about that with Rhea Ripley's comments about Randy Orton earlier on Raw. And people are talking about Punk more than anything else on Survivor Series War Games this past Saturday night. So we know that this guy has already came back, and automatically he's on the top of the card. Automatically he's one of their biggest stars, but he's not the biggest star in WWE. That belongs to Roman Reigns. That belongs to Cody Rhodes. Those guys have been established as their top, like top heel, top baby face. Punk's not there. So there's room where it's like, dude, you're not the top of the top. Like, and also, what this company has done, like, to make your life a living hell. This man was in legal troubles for years with this company. And quite frankly, I do think that he does play a little bit more like a Boy Scout when it comes to working back in WWE, just because he knows this company has way more power than like what AEW did. He was a free man. He could do, and they don't need him. That's the thing. They brought him back because they felt this was good for business. And if like Triple H said after the show, If the fans want it, we'll give it to them. If they don't want it, then we'll give the fans what they want. That frankly shows to me that like I think this could last longer. Now, how long? I'm not going to be a predicting man. I think it could hopefully last longer than a year. But like I said with AEW, I don't care how long it lasts because I didn't think I was ever going to get this. I am along for the ride just as I was for AEW's run, which was bumpy and chaotic and ended in a train fire. But I was along for the entire thing. And I'm along for this entire thing as well. But I would like to hopefully believe that he would last longer than a year.
Yeah.
Maybe he gets 2 WrestleManias in him before, because his age is catching up with him too. So he could retire too, just on his own terms.
Hurt. I mean, obviously we've seen
that's
him
another
get hurt
thing
a couple
too.
Times too. That would be an entirely different thing. That's nobody's fault.
Sure.
I hope so too, because I do think things at the very least are more interesting with him around. So I hope I do get to see the Seth match, and I hope I do get to see the Roman match. I think that would be freaking awesome. Quickly, because we got to go, and we will go on this. You've also been a huge AEW fan since the beginning. They are kind of in a rough spot right now. And now this happens. And I had a couple of friends tell me this as well. Well, they put a bullet in AEW on Saturday. I don't know if it was a death bullet, but they put a bullet in them. Your thoughts on that company now? Because I thought someone said it very well. The famous Trevor Dame on Twitter talked about someone else who said to him about AEW. And their big thing was, it was kind of the cast off, and it was Cody and CM Punk, the 2 big poster children of AEW. And their whole thing was they were cast off of WWE. And that's why it was the counterculture type company and whatever. And maybe they still are, but their 2 poster children, or 2 of them, are now in WWE and main eventing WrestleManias. And maybe their only star that they made, Jade, whether you think she can wrestle or not, look at her. She's a star, is now there too.
That being said, she has been nowhere for the last month or 2.
Which got brought up by Triple H. And he said she's not ready because, they don't know how to train people down there. Shocking. Oh, and that guy quit today too. Anyway, your thoughts on that. Where do they go? What's the future? Because a lot of people think the world champion is the future. You know my thoughts on him, and a whole lot of people are down on him right now and what he's been doing the past couple of months. Quickly, where do they go here? Because it's been a bad look here for a couple of months.
All I would say, this is a perception shifter for a lot of people, because I mean, at the end of the day, this is the first AEW world champion to go to WWE. It is a perception changer. Whether he was fired, whether he left, it didn't matter.
Right.
He's the first AEW champion to go to WWE. So that's going to be a perception shifter regardless.
And he went back to the place he said was hell,
Right.
Earth.
There you go. So, and again, that's definitely going to shift the perspective for a lot of people. I still believe that AEW is producing a lot of good stuff. Full Gear this past couple weeks ago was a really good show that had a lot of really good stuff. And I have been a fan of MJF's stuff. Obviously, I still prefer him as an arrogant asshole because, I mean, that's what he does best. But he has managed to get a lot of stuff over that is dumb and really silly in a AEW world. He's doing a lot of sports entertainment stuff in a pro wrestling company, and it's getting over. So I think that cannot be lost in terms of how he's performing. And I am interested in seeing what this whole devil storyline ends up coming out to be when it ends up blowing off and everything. And I still think they have a ton of great talent. Swerve Strickland is a star. And he is a guy I think will be the first African-American AEW world champion. And he is a guy that has been spectacular. I think they still got plenty. They still got a bunch of talent still in the tag division and in the women's division. I think they've got a lot of stuff to be excited about with that. And also it's a very young roster, whereas WWE has a lot more of the older talent, which isn't a bad thing, but it's just a difference. Sure. So they are still setting themselves apart where they are counterculture in that sense. the perception has shifted for a lot of fans, especially on the internet. But also, those fans were the same people that were celebrating when he was fired in the first place. So, take the internet's opinion with a grain of salt.
But even without Punk, though, they've lost some perception here.
Sure, no, and that cannot be denied too. And it's definitely something that hurts the bottom line for them too. But I think you keep working in the world that they are, because they are a wrestling company that the independents born from hardcore pro wrestling audiences. And I think if you just keep playing to that audience, because at this point, it's going to be very, very hard to pull from WWE's fan base. Like, if it's been 4 or 5 years since the company's been born, you've gotten basically all the fans you can from the WWE fans that have been felt like they've been casted off and forgotten about. So they just got to really stick to what they do best. And I think that's what they did with Full Gear, hardcore pro wrestling, also a lot of hardcore, bloody style matches that WWE would never do anymore. And I think you stick to doing that, you will be set. You will not compete with WWE, which I also don't think is something that they would ever be able to do. Even when they did have CM Punk, they were never getting to that level. They got close, but they never got to that level.
I think they are doing too much sports entertaining stuff the last couple of months. I think maybe that's a little bit what people
that's the thing.
about.
And I think if they continue to do stuff like they did with the Hangman and Swerve match and stick to the stuff that they do best, I think they will be fine. And I'm like you said, I was with AEW since day one. I've been a CM Punk fan since I started watching wrestling, so I will still support both. And I just hope that wrestling fans get to really reap from everything that we're getting, because there's so much good stuff right now. And I'm just happy my favorite wrestler is back on TV.
There we go. And it should be an interesting couple of months and however long, couple of years, if he is still in WWE. Austin,
knock on wood.
Appreciate you always being here, buddy. You're welcome anytime. Thanks, everybody. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, and please watch our other shows if you haven't done so already. For now, job guys. Out.
Pleasure's all yours, Bucky boys.